I am a Jewish Holocaust child survivor, and I was very little. My mother was hiding under a false name and pregnant. My father was in Mauthausen, which is one of these concentration camps. He was taken there. He did return when I was 8 months old. And I know about the circumstances of my birth because my mother, she sat down and wrote the story of my birth. And when I turned 13, my mother handed over these memoirs, which said that for my darling little Agnes, so that you learn what happened and that you fight that such times about which I'm writing here should never repeat. So that was my birthday present when I was 13.
The State of Israel was created when you were a child. What did your family think?
The conversation was always, we must go to Eretz Israel, and it was called Eretz Israel, but very often also Palestine. And that seemed like the utopia, heaven for Jewish people. And I don't think anybody thought much about what was there, but I think the information fed was that it was an empty land.
Do you remember your first trip to Israel and your first impressions?
Oh yeah, I remember very clearly because all my life I thought I was going to go to Israel. I will make Aliyah and finally I will go, which is my home, Eretz Israel. So in the early 1980s, I did go there with the intention of settling. The first thing I saw when I arrived that some cars had blue car plates and some cars had yellow car plates. It was separate color, different color for the Jews, Israeli Jews, and different color for the Israeli Arabs. I was in utter shock because I thought, well, the Jews during the Nazi times were forced to wear a yellow star. So what's this differentiation, color? Anyway, to cut the long story short, I came back and I decided not to settle.
After your first trip, your only trip? Okay.
Yeah. But that was only one of the reasons. And for instance, when I managed to make it to Haifa, I met a Hungarian lady who was old from rural Hungary, and she managed to make Aliyah before the Holocaust, like 1930s. And I stayed with her for 2 or 3 days, and she said to me, and I will never forget that we Jews and Arabs, we lived totally happily together until the Americans and Brits came in. And some things never changed.
So you come back to the UK where you live by now. At what point did you become more active and more vocal about Israel being an apartheid state?
I mean, I was gradually becoming more and more critical of Israel over the decades, and I describe myself like a Zionist who's critical of the Israeli government. Now that was holding for a long time. Now obviously once the self-defense after the 7th October started, I was shocked about the intensity, and I was also very suspicious because Israel was warned that there might be some sort of attack. There was a lot of attack on these weekly IGEN protest meetings. It was in Swiss Cottage to start with because Tzipi Hotovely, who was the Israeli ambassador to the UK, lived there, and we wanted her out. And then the board of British deputies, in particular Phil Rosenberg, sent out a circular to all the synagogues who belong to the Board of Deputies, saying that there will be a big IGEM protest on the 2nd of May, and this is a very anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish protest. So on the 2nd of May 2025, our IGEM protest gathering, which had about 20-30 people, was confronted with about 80 or 100 Zionist people who were mobilized by the Board of Deputies, and there were a lot of non-Jews there, and they looked suspiciously as the far right with the St. George flags, and they were extremely loud, extremely rude, and we were actually reading up the names of Palestinian children who were murdered, and this mob were singing and dancing. So at that point, I decided, that's it. If this is Zionism, then I'm not Zionist, I'm anti-Zionist. I mean, having turned into an anti-Zionist, I looked into it. Because I was only Zionist because of emotions and because by default, because of the Holocaust. I think I already kind of stopped being a Zionist, but I didn't quite admit it to myself because it was so ingrained. And because I guess I carried on thinking that there must be a country where Jews can live in safety. But of course what's happening now is they don't live in safety. And also anti-Semitism is growing everywhere now. I mean, I can't be anti-Zionist unless I come to the conclusion that Zionism is racist. And this is what finally I realized or came to think. It's quite sad. So that was my journey from Zionism to anti-Zionism. But I actually don't believe in such a thing as two-state solution, partly because by the time we get there, the Israelis will murder all Palestinians. That's what they seem to be doing. They're still murdering them on a daily basis in spite of the so-called ceasefire. That's one thing. The other thing is that there is absolutely no reason why Jews and Palestinians and Arabs shouldn't live in peace in the land of Palestine. No reason, because further back, that's what they did. So I think that the only hope solution would be Palestine, with equal rights for Jews, Arabs, Palestinians. And do I hope? Yes, I do hope, because if I didn't hope, I wouldn't carry on my activism. You can't do this sort of activism if you don't think that it will ever happen. And I'm not the only Jewish person who think that. Not at all. Anyway, as long as you live, you have to hope. If you don't hope, you might as well pack it in.